There were 14 normal type Pokemon introduced in the 7th generation, with 9 of them considered potentially competitive. So let's go and see if any of them change up the list of our top 10 normal type Pokemon, and now we're going to update it for Pokemon Sun and Moon. As for other changes in the normal typing, there weren't really too many. Looking at the normal type moves, most of them are just Z moves, changed their type, or weren't even used. We have Breakneck Blitz, Extreme Evo Boost, and Pulverizing Pancake. All those are Z moves. We have Multi-Attack and Revelation Dance. Those actually change their typing depending on the situation. Laser Focus, Spotlight, and Tearful Look don't even get that much play. So yeah, not a lot of changes overall. Now looking at the old list for the top 10 normal typing before the 7th generation, we can see that there's going to be some obvious spoilers. I'm going to tell you right now that Smeargle and Kangaskhan have been nerfed off the list, but there's also going to be some other changes with buffs to certain Pokemon, metagame changes, and then new Pokemon being introduced. Let's go hop into Pokemon Showdown right now and look at number 10, which I'm going to say Type Null does have a solid place as a top 10 normal type Pokemon, and that's just because Eviolite makes it ridiculously tanky, and we can see there's a couple of other usage for it as well. That 95 across the board for a not fully evolved Pokemon is really good. So we have a 95 hit point Pokemon that's going to get Eviolite boosting in its 95 defense and special defense, while also being able to hit relatively hard. So with this, we have Swords Dance as a damage boosting option on the Type Null. After that, we can see that Type Null does have some varied coverage options. It can just go for the Stab Return, or even go into something else like the Iron Head. Sometimes you can give up the Swords Dance and just run offensive moves that are special attacks as well. Type Null does get access to the Tri-Attack, which does have that chance to paralyze, burn, or freeze the target, and even then, it's just such a tanky Pokemon that in certain stall situations, you can also run the Rest for some fairly reliable sustain, wake up, and then just keep on going. You can see Double Team and all kinds of crazy things on the Type Null, but overall, it's just a bulky Eviolite Pokemon, does a solid amount of damage, can halt the opponent's momentum pretty well, and it looks like it came out as the stronger Pokemon between Type Null and Silvally. This Pokemon can definitely tear it up, and also it just works out as a good defensive attacker. Number 9 on the list is going to be Stoutland. So Stoutland just kind of comes out of nowhere as, oh, by the way, this is a really strong Pokemon for the top 10 Pokemon list. That's because of some strategies that we've seen on Fan Fridays. That Stoutland is an amazing last resort Pokemon. That's because it does get access to the Scrappy or the Sand Rush ability, depending on how you're going to use it. With Sand Rush, all I have to do is set up Sandstorm, go for like Protect in doubles, like Protect Last Resort. We saw that in doubles with a Life Orb on the Stoutland, and that is some of the most unstoppable damage out there. That we have Pokemon that's going to be doubling its speed with a 110 on the attack, and then you can just like go for high amounts of speed investment, maybe cutting a little of that back because we don't need that much speed, and then getting a little bit of extra bulk out of it. As a fully evolved Pokemon, it actually has surprising stats for how little we see it. It's not really wasting too much in the special attack, and then 85, 90, 90 on hit points and defenses are really good. So this is going to give us good amount of damage, good amount of survivability. The Life Orb burn doesn't really hurt us too much, and under that Sandstorm, we're going to be doing some pretty devastating stuff, or it gets Yawn. So it can Normalium Z Yawn with that last resort and just become absolutely terrifying with the speed boost off of that. That's going to mean that all we have to do is go for a Jolly Nature, and that's all she wrote right there. So it's going to be a pretty crazy Pokemon moveset. And if we're running this moveset, then we can go and throw down these Scrappy Natures. So now we get to hit everything, and it turns out to be pretty awesome overall. Number 8 on this list is going to be Swellow. So Swellow got a buff in the 7th generation, and that is going to be to the special attack. So now we have a really solid special attacker, and that builds up into all kinds of different things. That what we do is we have a 125 base speed Pokemon. So right now, speed is a really good thing to have. With all the kind of slower Pokemon being introduced in the 7th generation, that's just pretty standard right there. We go Timid, we max out special attack, we go and run the Choice Specs, and guess what? This is another Pokemon that gets Scrappy. So now we just have some instant insane damage on the Boom Burst, and leads to some other combos as well. Doubles does allow you to get a lot of damage across the board, or also if you just go into singles, not much. If the opponent doesn't resist and isn't built as a tanky Pokemon, it's going to be a pretty bad day overall. Swellow is just kind of like excelled as one of the most insane late game sweeping Pokemon, just because it's hard to touch that speed when a lot of your sweepers have been taken out, and then it's really hard to ignore that damage. Even on switch-in, Boomburst gets to 2-hit KO a lot of things, so unless it's like one of the most bulky, resisting things ever, Swallow can come in now and absolutely wreck. It does have some other moveset options, and depending on where the move tutors go, that could change up its moveset. Pretty much just specs Boomburst, and Swallow doesn't have too bad of a time overall. Number 7 on the list is going to be Eevee. Now, Eevee is only here for one reason, and that is because of EVMZ and Extreme Evo Boost. So Extreme Evo Boost, Baton Pass. Like, you are effectively able to gift a +2 to every stat to any Pokemon that you want to. Sometimes it seems like it is a little tricky to get going. Like, you can't expect to just lead Eevee and get the ultimate Baton Pass Extreme Evo Boost super amazing success, but sometimes it happens. Other times, if you can exploit a tanky Pokemon, or not the strongest Pokemon, just bring in Eevee as revenge, they have to keep it on their mind. That whoever you're battling, they have to go, alright, I cannot leave myself vulnerable for one turn, or Eevee sets up, and then I lose. Also, in double battles, Eevee can get some support from a Follow Me Pokemon, or have Fake Out, and if it just goes unchecked for that one turn, Eevee is going to take off, and that Baton Pass is going to everyone. So as you can see right now, the 7th generation has changed a lot of things. Pokemon being introduced, the buffs, the move changes, just Pokemon being discovered like the Stoutland, and this list looks like a completely different list already. Alright, so number 6 on the list is going to be Chansey. Now, Chansey is a weird Pokemon because I didn't put it on the original top 10 Pokemon list, and then I realized, it's just one of those filth stall Pokemon that always finds some kind of viability and relevance, and you just max out its defense. You throw down the Eviolite, and then now this Pokemon just becomes absolutely ridiculous, and it's still ridiculous even now in the 7th generation. Like, the story of Chansey is that it comes in, it uses Minimize, and then it gets to Toxicue, and then it can do whatever else it wants from there. If it wants more reliable damage, you can also find the Seismic Toss on the Chansey, which is pretty comical. Then it has built-in Sustain, so it doesn't even matter after that, because it can still Soft-Boiled, or it can Cleric for the team as well, and just be a toxic stalling Pokemon that pretty much makes it really difficult for any status to stick to your team, and it's just a beefy, healing Cleric Pokemon, and if you don't have an immediate response to try to exploit its defense with an absurdly powerful physical move or a super effective fighting type hit, yeah, Chansey's just kind of going to go and stall you out for, well, forever. That's a very real possibility. Now, one thing that's also kind of brought some more attention to the Chansey in the 7th generation is Toxapex, that there's a lot of tanky, stally kind of Pokemon as well, and you can go for like a full defensive Toxapex that has Regenerator and resists fighting type moves. So it goes with some pretty nice synergy on the Chansey, and effectively you can just kind of build a team now with more sweepers and more hate. Chansey then comes in late, and your opponent can't do anything about it, so it's just going to be a slow and painful death from there. Always gotta respect Chansey, always gotta fear it. Just like the Eevee, it's always in the back of your opponent's mind, like, man, if they drop the Chansey right now, that's a free Minimize for them. I don't have a solid response, so that's another free Minimize. And then, yeah, I'm pretty screwed right there. So it's a pretty frustrating Pokemon to go up against, and that's why it's going to be on the list this time around. So for number 5 on the list, I'm kind of going to cheat this one, and that is because I'm putting both Porygon 2 and Porygon Z. Now, Porygon Z is on the list because it's just way too ridiculous with the Z conversion. +1 to all of its stats. So that means it gets the choice specs it always wants, while also having that choice scarf that it always wants, and it can change up its moves while also changing its type and adapting to whatever it needs to, and as a 3rd stage Pokemon, it's bulky enough to survive that first hit, and then kind of sweep your opponent away from there, while gaining absurd speed, and it's just ridiculous. So the adaptability plus conversion is also a really nice combo. I feel like Z conversion gives Porygon what it always wanted, because it could really never safely use conversion. Like, okay, you get outsped, conversion, and then you get outsped and die, and you don't really get to utilize the conversion. But now you can conversion, gain the speed boost, outspeed, and you just become a different Pokemon that still gets the adaptability boosting, and then your same type attack for whatever typing you choose, going to be pretty absurd. Or you can just stay normal typing, have a strong tri-attack. Then there's also options like the Thunderbolt. Porygon just gets to become the typing it wants. Ice Beam. Oh, now you just become an Ice-type Pokemon and blow everything up with the Ice Beam on +1. It is a 135 special attack Pokemon after all, so the damage snowballs out of control, the coverage is absolutely ridiculous, and Porygon Z, it's a Scarf Z, with even more damage, and then it can use whatever it needs to hit super effective on you. That's absolutely terrifying after just one turn of setup. Porygon 2 is going to be on this list because of Eviolite and Trick Room, that in doubles and singles, it just sits in there and it frustrates you because, alright, in double battles, we get the Trick Room, we get the Recover, and then it can have Toxic, it can have Ice Beam, so that means Garchomp has to worry about it, it can run the Thunderbolts, so that means Celesteela has to worry about it, it can just do what it needs to. It has little bits of utility, little bits of damage, it all adds up, and then it's as bulky as it gets because of the Eviolite. So, it's like Eviolite type null tankiness, except it also gets sustain. It can use Recover instead of having to worry about rest or anything like that. And then it gets download, so Porygon 2 can like kind of lead RNG and then get a +1 on special attack and just do more damage for free. Like Porygon 2 has over 100 special attack, even uninvested. Getting 0.5 into that's gonna be crazy, or hitting super effective hits. It's gonna be crazy, and then you have just recovery and super tankiness while setting up Trick Room, which is utility. So it provides everything while being an unkillable rock. In singles, you can change out the Trick Room, or you can even have Trick Room singles. There's a lot of different things you can do. I like personally running the Charge Beam on a singles Porygon 2. It lets you gain some damage, and then you can turn that around with an Ice Beam. And then you can also run the Toxic, which will help break up some stall Pokemon. Alright, so now let's transition on to number 4 on the list. There's already been so many changes so far, and number 4 on the list is going to be Oranguru. And that's because it's like Porygon 2. It's a bulky Pokemon, has an incredibly reliable Trick Room, but another thing that it brings, which is pretty crazy, is Instruct. And I get so many submissions for Fan Fries. I've seen so many crazy Instruct combos that you're just free to do whatever you want. Now also, Oranguru can have Inner Focus as an ability, so you can't fake it out. Which means if you put a Mental Herb on it, what are you going to do? How are you going to stop that? Because the other Pokemon on the field is also going to be threatening at the same time. That if you have a sweeping Pokemon, or like a tank, bulky Trick Room sweeper that just kind of wants to get Instruct comboed and then completely wipe out the field, you can't double focus onto the Oranguru, and even if you do, there's a slight chance that it could survive all of that by just running the fullest, most bulky, tanky craziness ever. It sets up the Trick Room, and now it's in for free. Now, it does have Telepathy, but I think just the threat of it potentially having Inner Focus is pretty powerful, and Telepathy is kind of easy and kind of hard to read at the same time. That if you see a Pokemon, it's going to be going for like Earthquake, Surf, or something that hits everyone, and then Oranguru is going to be instructing that. Maybe you could get a read on the Telepathy, but if you can't, and it's just like a Heat Wave Pokemon, or something that's just going to like single target nuke, GG, just handshake right there, it's going to be, it's a pretty tricky Pokemon to get around. Also, Oranguru just provides a lot of other support. So it's going to go Instruct, Trick Room, and then we could see Calm Mind. So if it wants to Calm Mind, you can't really stop that, and they can still turn around damage. It can use Foul Play, it can use Nasty Plot, it can use Psych Up. So Psych Up is actually really dirty. I've seen people Instruct and Minimize. So that means +4 on the Minimize, then Psych it up, and then just go for damage, or something like that. So Instruct, even though it can get 5 move slot syndrome pretty easily, it still works out pretty well to have something that you can't fully predict what's going to do, and even if it's an Instruct bot, that's still very devastating, and I think it just changes the way Trick Room is played. Like, it is the perfect Trick Room Pokemon under most situations. So now we have number 3 on the list, and this might upset some people. There's gonna be some people that are just saying, oh, Verlisify is playing favorites with the Snorlax, so that's like his signature Pokemon, being just a little too biased right there. But I think there's a strong case for Snorlax as one of the best normal type Pokemon in the game right now. I think 3 is a very fair place to put it, and that's because it has a couple of different options that it can run right now. Normalium Z gives it a very safe Belly Drum option if it needs to take it that way, which goes into Trick Room or just all kinds of crazy damage and stuff like that. But also, Normalium Z makes it to where Stockpile gives you a full heal. So Stockpile is effectively a Chesto Resto that gives you +1 in your defense and special defense while setting up. That's also pretty devastating right there, and then it got a little bit of a buff with the high horsepower, which finds usage here and there, that it's not a split damage Earthquake, and you don't have to worry about hitting your ally in doubles, so works pretty solid under the Trick Room. But there was also another huge change to the Snorlax, and that's the Confusion Berry. So we can just take one of these, and it restores half of the maximum hit points if at a quarter max hit points or less. But Snorlax gets Gluttony. So what you can do is Belly Drum Gluttony, into the Eye of Papa Berry, and that's going to immediately give you full health. So you have a full health, max attack Snorlax. The drawback of Belly Drum is completely negated, and you can go into Trick Room, or you can just also take that and run as damage as still a bulky Snorlax, and then at least find something to kill on your way out. That Snorlax is now just scarier. That Stockpile Snorlax was absolutely terrifying to go up against, and now it's harder to predict. Is it going to be the Gluttony for the shutdown, or is it also going to go for the Stockpile? And if you react improperly, if you take the wrong move on the Snorlax, then that means it's going to get free setup, and it's going to turn around and smack you sideways. But even then, like, we can see the Belly Drum works with the Stockpile setup. You can go Eye of Papa Berry. It's just a pretty absurd Pokemon right now, and I'm really happy to see that Snorlax kind of got buffed on the side while not being directly buffed. Number 2 on the list is going to remain Mega Lopunny. That, even though it has not been released yet, once Mega Lopunny is released, it's going to be what the metagame needs. 135 base speed Pokemon to contend with the Tapu Koko, to threaten the Tapu Koko with a lot of damage. Scrappy, also still going to be able to hit a lot of Pokemon that were introduced. It can still fight with the Mimikyu. It can still do all kinds of really good things to a lot of the Pokemon in the game. That Fake Out Last Resort Lopunny. Really, the only thing I can say is what you gonna do about that, because there's not much that can be done about it. But even then, if you can run like Fake Out, High Jump Kick, Return, Ice Punch, that's going to be a very solid Lopunny set as well. The only issue I see is that you're more forced to run the Jelly now because of the existence of all these fast Pokemon like the Tapu Koko, but still a very respectable, very high damage Pokemon that can come in and slap things around. Now, some people might argue that Lopunny shouldn't be as high on the list because Pheromosa exists, but even in the case of like normal type Pokemon, it's a normal type Pheromosa in a way, but also with that Scrappy ability, it can use its primary highest damage moves against ghost type Pokemon. Pheromosa has risk of being walled out. Lopunny doesn't really have that, so it does get reliable damage against quite a lot of Pokemon under a lot of different situations, and that's why it doesn't really move too much on the list. It's just going to be fast, sweeping Pokemon that can devastate a lot of things, so let's keep it right where it is on the list, which means number 1 on the list is also going to be the same with the Ditto. The explanation of why Ditto is number 1 on the list is pretty simple. It can copy the opponent's Pokemon and then be better. So if it's a sweeping Pokemon that has stat boost, now Ditto is a sweeping Pokemon with those stat boosts, and it can be faster because of running something like the Choice Scarf. That it just has so much advantage in a lot of the situations when it's running like this. You come in on the Imposter, you copy, you Choice Scarf, and then you blow them out of the water with their own strategy, and that's going to be it. Especially when you're looking at Ultra Beast. Ultra Beast can really snowball the game with all the beast boosting and whatnot. If you bring in Ditto, you can counteract that beast boosting, and then still turn around with a very threatening Pokemon. At the same time, there seems to be just more setup in general. More Pokemon trying to come in like the Mimikyu using Swords Dance. Other Pokemon like Garchomp always around with the Swords Dance setup. Some Dragon Dance Pokemon coming in as well. You know, Gyarados, Mega Gyarados, always something to worry about when it sets up enough Dragon Dances. So effectively, Ditto, like I said, it's just the opponent's Pokemon, but stronger. It's any Pokemon in the game, but it has the item advantage potential, and you can use that to just kind of halt their 100% win condition, and then change it into your win condition, and it's a pretty simple thing to say, but I think since Ditto has that potential, that's what makes it the best normal type Pokemon. So you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. That's my updated list for Pokemon Sun and Moon. Thank you very much for watching.